And today, in our next edition of History of the Bentleigh Football Club, I'm talking to former player and coach Dennis Crozier. Morning, Dennis.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Very well, my friend. And you've had a very long history in football.
Look, Mark, it's probably been the thing that's my driving factor as a person is football. I love being around football clubs. I love the camaraderie, and like you, I just love to be among teammates, old, new, and I also love to see a football club go from something of, I guess, mediocrity beginnings to premiers, and we've both been a part of that thing, and it's just a feeling I can't express.
Yeah, it is a magic feeling. Now, where did your football journey start, Dennis?
Well, my football journey started at Box Hill Pioneers in 1968 in the under-17, in the under-15s, because they only had under-15s and under-17s in those days, and I was playing under-15s, and we were lucky enough to be runners-up that year, and all my junior days were premiership years. And I also played Sundays for a team called Greythorn, and I also played for Box Hill High School. So I guess my junior days were ridiculously successful in that I was lucky enough to play with teams that were extremely successful.
And you must have been a decent player because, as I understand it, you played for Hawthorn under-19s.
I did play for Hawthorn under-19s, 71 and 72. I was there, and they were the years that, well, at 71, we were following a premiership year, I believe, from the seniors. And look, I was the sort of player that I always loved the Box Hill Pioneers. So as people do, I didn't really feel that I was fitting in at Hawthorn under-19s. So I went back and played at Box Hill Pioneers.
How long did you spend at Hawthorn?
I played 3 or 4 games in the first year and 5 or 6 games in the second year.
Okay.
And both years I went back and played with Pioneers, and at Hawthorn, that was a no-no. That was a definite no-no. You know, it was sort of, you're here, we own you, and you give your heart and soul to this club, which I believe in, by the way, and my heart and soul was at Box Hill Pioneers.
So any famous names that you played with in those under-19 teams?
Oh, definitely, Mark. You know, I played with Bernie Jones, Alan Goad. Oh, goodness me. I trained with, Lee Matthews, Peter Knights, all those boys. I remember Lee Matthews doing a stab pass and hitting me on the chest, and I dropped it only because I was petrified. And he ran past me just as the ball virtually hit me. And he said, if I kick the ball to you, don't drop it.
And that was in the under-19s?
No, we used to get a bit of a run with the seniors there for a while. And John Kennedy had a yearning for putting young fellas into the seniors. And most of those guys that were playing seniors at that stage were players that were 19, 20-year-olds tops. You know, they had a few sprinklings of the older ones, but Kennedy was very, very good. You know, he used to come and watch the under-19s, and if he didn't believe that Brian Coleman, who was that coach at the under-19s, was sort of, I guess, churning the training up to a standard he believed in, you could hear his booming voice from the stands, and he would virtually take over. I remember one day in particular, we had to roll the balls along the ground from one end of Glenfrey to the other. And John Kennedy believed that we weren't rolling the balls in the way he would like it. We were sort of making it so it would bounce up to us. So he said, put the footballs down, and he went and got cricket balls. And he said, now pat these along the ground, up and down. And for most of the night, that's what we did, but it certainly taught us a lesson.
Well, you're lucky to have some tutelage from one of the doyens of AFL coaches, VFL coaches, John Kennedy. Did you shape your coaching style on Kennedy's methods?
Look, Mark, I was really, really blessed. My junior coaches, a guy called Herb Smith, who was a Box Hill player, and a guy called Brian Little in under-15s and under-17s, who played with me at seniors at Box Hill Pioneers, were brilliant coaches and premiership coaches right through juniors, and had played in premierships in senior football. So they were probably a couple of my mentors. The other one was obviously a guy like John Kennedy. And then later on, in 1978, I met a fellow called Alan White, and he was a brilliant coach and a brilliant footballer. And so a little bit of everything came from there, but I was blessed enough to attend coaching courses, both run by Bentleigh with Melbourne Football Club, where Ron Barassi was at. And I also played a little bit of sort of, I guess, state footy where, what was his name? Anyway, I can't think of it. He was a brilliant coach. He was Ron Barassi's assistant. So I had a few coaches that that really taught me how to coach, you know.
Okay. So we intersect before Bentleigh in that at one stage you were down in the Latrobe Valley playing with Morwell.
Mark, you know, Morwell I was transferred to Morwell by a company called Ramset. And we were in Buckley Street, Morwell. I had to set up. I was a young fellow. I'd just come out of the under-19s and the Pioneers A-grade side. And we had to set up in Morwell. And I actually got to play a couple of games there, which was the Morwell Tigers was a blessing. But, you know, again, I missed the Pioneers. So I used to travel home and play at the Pioneers, and then moved on to Box Hill the next year.
Now, I heard tell that while you're at Morwell, you understood how seriously some supporters take their football, one of those being a butcher. Would you like to tell the viewers about what happened to you?
Now, Mark, we played a practice game. We played a practice game, and I was the boy from Melbourne. And, you know, in those days, Morwell would pay a couple of players, and a couple of those players were actually players that I played with in the under-19s at Hawthorn. And they'd pay them to come up, and they'd virtually send them up in a taxi. So you had to perform. If you didn't perform, the town really didn't particularly care for you much. So one day we played a game, I think it was against Warragul, and I'd happened to play a reasonable sort of game. And I went into the butcher's and asked for my usual sausages and went to pay him money over, which I can't remember what it was. Let's say it was $5 or $10. And he said, "No, mate, no, look, you know, this is fantastic. I watched you on the weekend and, you know, welcome, blah, blah, blah." And the next week, I think we played Traralgon and we were belted. We were absolutely belted. And not only belted, I was embarrassed because I'd played a pretty lousy game. Went into the butcher's thinking, I'll get my free sausages or chops. And as he handed me the meat, I can never forget, he said, "That'll be $10. Never said anything else, you know, but his displeasure of me and my performance was quite evident.
Yeah. So welcome to country football.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. But we had a gentleman called Bruce Chalmers coaching Morwell then. And Bruce he was a tough taskmaster. And I did all the pre-season with them and everything like that. And he was another one that I learned a bit of football from, you know. And Bruce was a player in that stage too. And he mentioned to me how difficult it was to coach and play, because he said, "You play 20 games of football, not one." And that was his comment to me.
Yeah.
So, and I think he was right.
Yeah, he was a very successful coach in the Latrobe Valley. He coached Trafalgar to a number of premierships.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
So tell the viewers, Dennis, how does your Bentleigh journey start?
My Bentleigh journey started in 1979, near the end of the season. We were playing a team called Emmanuel, and I was the only ruckman at Pioneers in 1979 because we didn't have, Peter Krasumas had retired and we didn't have a ruckman. The end of the game came and the goal umpire walked up to me and I thought, gosh, have I done something wrong here? And he introduced himself as Jim Manili, asked me if I knew who he was, and I had heard of Jim Manili. Jim was a stalwart of the Eastern Suburban Churches Football League and of the Bentleigh Football Club. And he mentioned to me that I should join my cousin at Bentleigh. And I really didn't know too much about what he was asking, and he asked me about coaching aspirations, and I said, well, I'm sort of assistant at Pioneers, at the moment. And he said, well, the season's nearly over. Would you consider it? And I did. And there was a follow-up call from Jim. And then I met with Gary Matlock and Jim at the Bentleigh Football Club in Mackie Road later on that year at the end of the season, and was appointed senior coach of Bentleigh. And Bob Tidwell was appointed, I think, reserves coach that year.
That's right. Now, for those who don't know, who's your cousin?
David Crozier. Yeah, David, whose son now, Hayden Crozier, obviously, is playing with the Bulldogs and having a blistering season this year.
So 1980 is your first year as coach?
1980, I arrived at the club. Well, actually, 79, we started rather early for Bentleigh. We started back, I wanted 5, and I remember this, I wanted 5 training runs before the end of the year. And that was something that was unheard of. You know, we're not AFL football or VFL footballers in those days. We're just, you know, local footy players, and maybe we don't want to train that early. But training was good and it was well represented by the players. The only thing that I realised was a couple of the big names who I'd played against in years gone by at the A-grade players, I classed them as in Bentleigh, some of them were missing.
And who were they?
Big John Delaney. I didn't really know of Greg Clough, but I knew of Morris James because Morris James had come up through the junior ranks with Dave Crozier, my cousin. So those 3 players were the 3 players that I believed were at Bentleigh, but found they weren't.
So whether being fortunate or unfortunate, at the end of 79 was when I decided that I would resume my football career. And you were my coach, so I can honestly say that those first 5 training sessions were akin to what I would normally have had mid-season, I think.
Look, Mark, I remember those nights, and it was fun. I mean, we worked really hard, but it was fun, and we went into Christmas really believing in ourselves, our fitness, and really having a blueprint for 1980.
Okay. The first season as coach, probably not what you thought would be a successful season. 7 wins and 11 losses, finishing 8th, which means you're one rung above relegation.
Mark, it was a very disappointing year. We just didn't have the players, and I believe my coaching probably could have been better. That was my first year of being a senior coach, or a coach of any type really, except for assistant. And I just don't think there was enough maturity there right round, whether it was coaching, whether it was playing. So we had to recruit, and we had to recruit for 81, and we had to recruit a team that was capable of playing A-grade football. And
from my recollection, that's what you told most emphatically. You said that to Gary and I.
I certainly did, Mark, and you guys worked extremely hard. And you know, just a few of the odd names that came back to the club: John Mother Delaney, who was just a champion A-grade footballer and an A-grade best and fairest; Greg Clough, a champion ruckman; Morris James, exceptional centre-half back; Peter Krashumis was already at the club. He'd come with me. Peter Allen was there, Michael Hudson. And then we brought a young fella, Alan White, who was my mentor in. And Alan was not just a good footballer, he was great to have around the football club. He was the sort of person who'd put his hands up and say, "Put away your fears, I've arrived." You know, and most of us did.
Well, Alan had a tremendous VFA career with Caulfield.
Absolutely. I'm not sure. I know he played VFA, but I'm not sure if he was runner-up in the JJ Liston Trophy or a winner of the JJ. That I'm unsure of, but I know he was a champion. And he coached me at Pioneers in 1978, and we were runners-up that year and took us to A-grade. So, but he'd also been a premiership coach and player with Belgrave.
And he certainly made the full forward position his own, didn't he?
He owned it. He owned it. You know, some of my fond memories of Alan White was before a grand final doing hamstring stretches on the full back, and the full back pushed him off, and he said to him, "Do you want me to strain a hamstring?"
So 1981 is a tremendous season for Bentleigh. 15 wins, only 3 losses, finish on top of the ladder, and then run into, this is in C grade, then run into Glen Waverley in the second semi.
We went to Glen Waverley, Mark, and the reserves also had been there that day and won before us, I think. And we went to Box Hill, and it was a miserable day. It was pouring with rain. The ground was sodden. It was a huge ground, Box Hill, compared to the Bentleigh ground. Glen Waverley, oh, Mount Waverley, sorry, they were, weren't they? Oh, Glen Waverley, no, Glen Waverley. Yeah, Glen Waverley. They were an exceptional side. They had a lot of young players, and they just handled the conditions better than we did. And we lost that second semi-final. I think we went on to win the preliminary final and then lost the grand final by a few points.
Yeah, beat Elwood in the preliminary final,
which was a tough game, Mark.
It was a similar winter's day with mud, rain, and it was a great win. And then played Glen Waverley again in the grand final. Yeah,
we played Glen Waverley in the grand final. Remember, we also had a few people like Steve Gillum, who joined the club in 1981. Stevie Dennis, who was a ruck. Both these were were policemen and were exceptional footballers and strong footballers. So we thought we were well equipped to win that grand final. Unfortunately, again, Glen Waverley handled the conditions better than us, and we went down by a few points, I think it was.
One other thing I'll mention, Dennis, and that's aside from the conditions, probably the worst ground that the Church's competition could draw Bentleigh on for a final would be Box Hill. If you compare our home ground at Mackie Oval as it was then to the Box Hill ground, because those two grounds were like chalk and cheese.
Absolutely. And it was exactly the same sort of ground that Glen Waverley had. Huge, big ground covered in clay. Yeah. We also had a misfortune that day where I think Alan White was sent off for a little while, and that certainly hurt us. I'm not sure whether we replaced him or not, but and I believe he really didn't do too much wrong. The umpire just sent him off, and that hurt us quite considerably because only losing by a few points. But look, there's no excuses. They were better than us on the day and won the flag.
Yeah, and so runners up in C grade, and the reserves were also premiers.
Premiers, and Peter Farnsworth was the coach of the team that year. And you played in that team, didn't you, Mark?
No.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, sorry, I thought you did. Yeah, look, that was an excellent side, and we had, Mark, as you know, the people to actually bolster the seniors. You know, we could have 3-4 injuries of major players and still bring up reserve players that could equip themselves very well in senior football. And that's the key to, I guess, any club's success.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of being your runner on that for those seasons, Dennis. And I think the worst message I had to give you was when I had to run out and tell you that the other two selectors thought you should come and have a rest on the bench. I've never forgotten that day. That I think I ran faster away from you than I did towards you. You told me to go back to the boundary line and explain to the selectors that you weren't coming off.
In those words exactly, no?
So promotion to B grade, and the winning continues because, again, in 82, finished on top of the ladder, 13 wins, 5 losses, which is, to go up a grade and still maintain the position on the ladder and the ability. Lose the second semi to Hampton. Also at Box Hill, these finals. My recollection is I think we're about 21 points up at 3/4 time. And I think Hampton kicked about 9 or 10 goals in the last quarter.
Yeah, was that the prelim? That was the prelim, I think, Mark, wasn't it?
No, that was the second semi.
Oh, okay.
We had 1 foot in the grand final.
Oh, we did too. Yeah, I remember that because I remember Swanee Gary Matlock coming up to me, and I think it was 3/4 time, and he said, I hope you like the brand of champagne. Because that meant if we won that, we were in A grade.
Correct.
And that was what we wanted to do, probably even more than win a grand final.
Yes.
Look, that was certainly what we wanted, to get the club into A grade and make sure we're in our rightful position. And, you know, I sort of went the usual red that I do and said, look, you know, we haven't. And then in the last quarter, I think they just killed us. They absolutely killed us from the middle. They killed us.
I think a lot of the players were already in their minds sampling the champagne for after the game.
You know, Mark, that's spot on. It was a rookie mistake, wasn't it? You know, we try to teach players now, you know, it ain't over till it's over.
Yeah.
And we didn't learn that, and we did learn it in a hard lesson at the end of that game.
And in the preliminary final, went down by 7 points to our nemesis, Glenn Waverley again.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you remember who kicked the winning goal?
No, I don't. Oh, Dean Jones, wasn't it?
Correct.
Yeah, that's right.
Former Australian cricketer.
That's right. Yeah, good footballer too.
He was kicked 100 goals from centre half forward.
Yeah, he used to clap himself though. I'm not sure that was what I'd like, but maybe clapping the crowd.
I think I can remember you discussing those things with him on several occasions.
Many occasions.
So, 82 is the end of your coaching stint at Bentleigh. You've come off 2 seasons where you've won 28 games, lost 8, got promotion, finished top of the ladder both seasons, and that's the end of Bentleigh. What happened?
Oh, look, Mark, I think if I remember rightly, and Gary and yourself probably know better than me in this, I think if I'd applied as a non-playing coach, I probably would have secured another year or 2 or whatever it was, but I wanted to keep playing. You know, I was, what was I, 29 or 30 or whatever, or 29 I think it was, and I just wanted to keep playing football, and I thought there was a lot of football left in me, even though I was banged up a bit with knees and shoulders and goodness only knows what. But I wanted to keep playing, and it wasn't to be. So as Gary said on his 50th anniversary of the club and himself, he said, I sacked you, Dennis. You know, and I really didn't know that he had sacked me until that night. And I thought, no, wait a minute, wasn't an amicable decision where I said I want to play and you said, we don't want you playing? So I went on and I coached Bennettswood in the DFL in those days, you know.
Okay. And how did your coaching stint, did you play as well?
I played. We actually went to Bennettswood. Oh, I did. And it was the only club I didn't take any players to. I was very lucky with Bentleigh. You know, I had a lot of players follow me, 5, 6, probably 9 players in the end came to Bentleigh from other clubs that I'd been a part of, mainly Pioneers. With Bennettswood, I didn't. Bennettswood were in 2nd division in the EDFL. And I can remember the last practice game. Mitcham was the yardstick in those days, and we played them in the last practice game. And with a bunch of kids that I promoted who were playing under 18s, we beat Mitcham in the last practice game, and it was a big deal around the club. But I didn't feel that I was, I guess, I didn't feel like that was my club to be at. So within about 5 or 6 weeks, I actually left Bennettswood. And I don't know if you're aware of this. I left Bennettswood, went back and played with Pioneers, and then came back to Bennettswood the next year. And in 1984, won a grand final there. So it was a fantastic thing. And when I came back with a few fellas that I'd played both at Box Hill and at Box Hill Pioneers, and we took a grand final. And that was a great 1-point win against Upper Ferntree Gully, and I'll never forget that game. You know, we won the first semi by a point and won the grand final by a point. It's just unbelievable.
And how long were you at Bennettswood?
I was at Bennettswood for 7 years.
It's a long time.
Yeah, it was a long time, and all of those 7 years, except for maybe 2 or 3, I coached either seniors or reserves. So,
and was that your last coaching stint, or did you go on after that?
After Bennettswood, I worked out that it was really hard for me to get a kick in any standard football. So I started my own club, and we call it the Ely Park Sharks. Now, Ely Park there's Ely Road in Blackburn South here, and the way we started this club was there was a few guys just kicking a football around, and I was coaching, I think it was the under-14s at East Burwood in those days because my son was playing in it, and a few of the boys came over and said, "Hey, Dad, do you want to coach us?" And I said, "There's only 5 of you." So I thought it was just like a friendly kick or something like that. And they said, no, we're getting a side together. And in those days, we went into Club 18 in the amateurs for 1 year. And then the second year, we were in the churches. And third year, we won a flag. So that was a real start a football club and see it progress. So it was something brilliant. And then in 1999 and 2000, I went back and coached the Box Hill Pioneers, or the White Horse Pioneers as they were known then.
So you had a fair stint in coaching once you started at Bentleigh.
Oh, look, Mark, I owe a lot to Bentleigh. It taught me really how to coach football. It taught me, even in management, it taught me how to get on with people, how to deal with people at all different levels, and how to be, I guess, considerate of what you say and how you act, because it influences a great deal on how other people feel.
Okay, Dennis, I've only got 2 more questions for you. Firstly, what's your proudest moment from being at Bentleigh?
Oh, my proudest moment of being at Bentleigh is seeing the group of players that we had in C grade virtually all move together and be a club that was, I believe, an A grade club, and bringing back some champions that really should never have left. The other thing, Mark, is the support, and I'm not just saying this because you're interviewing me, the support that guys like yourself and Gary Madlock and the work. I mean, it was easy for me to come there on Tuesday and Thursday and fool around on the ground on Saturday. It wasn't that easy to run a football club professionally that had never been run professionally before. And you guys did that. That's my proudest moments.
Okay, and what's the worst moment you had?
The worst moment was hearing there was a meeting to sack me.
I can understand that. Well, listen, it's good that we can look back on it and laugh. Can I say, having been involved at Bentleigh at that time in a major way with Gary Matlock, that one of the things that Gary and I was trying to do was take Bentleigh to the next step. As far as I'm concerned, I think as far as Gary's concerned, the appointment of the coach was probably one of the most important things. And at that time in Bentleigh's history, let me tell you this, Dennis, and I've said it to you before, your appointment was a masterstroke, because you took that football club and set it on a road to the path where it is today. And for that, everybody needs to be thankful.
I thank you very much for your kind words, Mark. But in all honesty, we did it as a team. Like we did everything as a team when I was there. The 3 years I was there, and it's continued that way. I certainly believe it. I can see it when my sons came back and played there. The club hasn't changed that much from your and my day, Mark, which is a real bonus.
No, you're right, it hasn't. And that's why it's always easy to walk in there and enjoy yourself.
It was the least time I ever spent at a senior football club. And it's probably next to the Box Hill Pioneers, because obviously all my junior football was there, is the most loved, I guess, memories of mine.
Okay, Dennis, many thanks for spending some time talking about your history with the club, and all the best.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for the chance.